So this is really the first of all presentations that we do. So a large chunk of what we're going to show you is what the system can do, what you can use it for yourselves, and how people are doing it elsewhere. Some of the slides I borrowed from Geosphere themselves for the presentations that they make to the various county ALCs. So I apologize if some of them you've seen before. And then the last third of the presentation today is going to involve an interactive session with you joining in should you wish to. It's not crucial. The idea is just to get people used to the idea of getting into Parish Online and seeing how it works. For those of you who attended last week's 102 session, the presentation at the end may seem to be a bit repetitive. So if you feel that you've seen enough to go, that's by all means, please do. So we are recording today's session because there are a lot of slides to whiz through. Rather than stay on each slide, I tend to give you a quick patter and move on to the next one. The idea being that you will get a recording of the video at the end of the session, plus you'll get the slides themselves, so that if there's anything that you want to review, you can do it in your own time. Please feel free to put questions in the chat system. I don't usually see the chat until we get to the end of the presentation, but at least if we run out of time, I'll be able to come back to you later to give you answers. Wave and shout if you're having any issues as we go along the way. Now, the interactive bit will require people to be logged into Parish Online with an account that's got at least editor privileges. For those of you who are parish clerks, you probably actually already have administrator privileges, which is fine. And we'll get into that in more detail when we get there. So what we're going to cover today is how you get hold of the proper licenses to enable the system you've got to work in the highest level of detail. Then we're going to show you, as I said, what the system can do and how it does it. We'll then talk about the maps and layers that make up the entire system. And then how you use those to advantage to give people a much better view of what it is you're trying to convey. And then we get into the fun of doing it ourselves. We'd finish off with just a brief mention of the main menus in the system and the asset register. For those of you who are interested in the asset register, there is next week's sessions are all about the asset register. And at the end, we have a Q&A session where you ask all the questions and I run away. All right, so the public sector geospatial agreement is an arrangement from the government that pays the Ordnance Survey to make available to you the highest definition of digital map that they provide. So it's an entirely free system to any local council, and it's just a matter of your having to register for it. If you've already had somebody do this for you within Parish Online, then this is something that's not going to bother you. If it hasn't happened yet, then the system will ask you to enter a number. And what we're going to do today is show you how to get the number. So if you don't have the PSGA involved, then the maps that you see look something like the one on the right. But if you do have it, you leap up in sort of detail to something like this. So it does make a colossal difference, and all sorts of layers that are not working in the lower definition are much better off with PSGA. So you do need PSGA. It doesn't cost you anything. It's fairly quick and simple, and I don't really think you can do without it. Ditto for the aerial photography of Great Britain. That's also a massive part of the system. It makes life very much more entrancing and easy to do things. So again, you go from the picture on the right to the level of detail that you see there now. A big aid to when you're doing things like cemeteries, allotments, street lights, and so forth, and we'll go all into that later. But when you get your PSGA number, it automatically sort of lists you up for the APGB. So we'll just show you how you go about doing that. So when you go into Parish Online, this is the first page that you see. And up on the top right-hand corner, I'm just going to move people down so I can see it. There is up here a little cogwheel. And if you click on it, it brings up a mini menu, which is what I'm doing now. And then there's a choice of drop downs. And if you go for help and support, that takes you to the brand new knowledge base that Geosphere are busy writing at the moment, which is a really helpful system. And if you type in the search box here, PSGA, up comes getting a PSGA number, and that goes through the step-by-step things that you need to do to get it. The PSGA then says, having made this application, you will get your number within the next 5 days. Experience shows it tends to be a lot faster than that. In fact, in many cases, it's within a minute or two. Just depends how busy their computers are, but it's not a long process by and large. Then I can show you later how we get it into the system in Parish Online if it's not already there, or if you're not already being asked for it when you log into Parish Online at the start. All right, this is now where we leap into the sorts of things that people can do with Parish Online and how it works. So first of all, this is a cloud-based system. All you need to use it is your web browser. We'll go into which web browsers later, but all you really need is a browser and an internet connection. So you can use this on your tablets. You can even use it on your smartphones. And in fact, next week, we'll find out why you want to use it on your smartphones. And everything is hidden nicely away on Amazon Web Services data servers in the UK. So your data are safe. Amongst other things, Parish Online provides a really full set of tutorials. There's a knowledge base to help you out when you have issues. There's email support. You can open tickets to get answers. And I do recommend you do that because the ticketing system that they have is superbly supported. They're very good at getting back to you very quickly. I don't think I've had a question yet that hasn't got back an answer within an hour or so. And then at the end of the session today, I'll be emailing you some useful places to go to, one of which is the online user group, which has a Friday afternoon banter session between 3 and 4 on Friday afternoons. You can just come in free to any session, ask any questions you like on Parish Online, and then just drop out again unless you're absolutely fascinated by the banter, in which case you're welcome to stay. So, why use maps in the first place? So it's very much easier to visualize data if you can see what people are talking about. So every one of these sort of arrow things on the picture in red represents a piece of information. And if you click on the information, it will pop up on the left-hand side, and you'll see that when we get into the system furthermore. It's what I call location-based data. So if you want to know an answer about something, click on the something. And if there's an entry on it, it will pop up. Why do usual local councils use Parish Online? Well, all these answers really pop up. It's hugely useful for things like contracts management. You could send a quick map to the people who are going to mow your grass, so they know exactly where they're responsible for and where they're not required to go. Insurance companies are delighted if you're using the asset register because it means everything is properly accounted for and valuated. And I think people have seen in COVID-19 days that the public communications and the emergency resilience has been splendiferous. So one of the main reasons people buy Parish Online in the first place is neighborhood plans. It's brilliant for producing the maps that your neighborhood plans need. And that's often the trigger point to get people started. The other thing that I think it's really fabulous at doing is moving things out of your filing cabinet onto an online 24/7 available system that's open to multiple users. So for those of you who suffered from parish clerks who have gone off to the Canaries with the key to the filing cabinet in their pocket, no more of that. Everything is now available to as many of you as you like at any time of the day or night. So it makes life a lot easier for everybody. It also makes it very much easier for poor old overworked parish clerks to spread the load. If they can give part of the work of keeping the system going to somebody else, then that's all to the better. And out of interest, the most fun thing I've heard about this is that parish councils are finding they're recruiting more young people because they can't wait to get their hands on a new expensive digital toy to play with. So there's a plus for you. Okay, it gives you your own tools to create your own layers. We will be doing this later today, so I won't talk about it very much at the moment, except to say that you can put in here whatever it is that you need to do your job. And the vast majority of the layers of data that we'll be using shortly come from outsiders. So third-party businesses, third-party institutions, and certainly large parts of the government are all contributing to the layers of data that we're about to take a look at. But basically, they all keep up their data up to date, and it automatically comes down to Parish Online. And so you are seeing, in most cases, the very latest data that's available to anybody. Now, if you have a question on how to do something or whether you can do something, the chances are that somebody else has already done it before you. And the case studies page on the Parish Online website gives you examples. So I've got a couple of examples here of people using it for neighborhood planning, people using it for, this particular one is showing how various views of the horizon are sort of affected by building plans. You can sort of scope in what people need to be able to see, that you're not going to interrupt their sky visibility or whatever it is that people are important about. But you can also see how you can use it to show areas that are being developed, areas that are going to be subject to flooding or conservation areas, all sorts of things. Comme ça. I love this top right-hand corner picture because it shows just crystal clearly how many assets CELSI has to look after and how the only way they can track them is to have a record for each. And then you can click on the record and find out when it was last maintained, when it was last repainted, if there have been any incidents there, all that sort of stuff, clearly visible in this diagram. Another way of showing people what it's going to be, where you're hiding your cameras, or what the value is of them, all in the same place at the same time. And then we found that gritting route data shared from the local authority is crucial. And part of what we'll be talking about is how you need to go to your local authority to persuade them to export data if they are not already doing it. They got good news and bad news in this area. A vast number of local authorities are not exporting the sort of data that you need. Useful stuff like your local footpaths and what the gritting routes are in the winter. The good news is that all those I've talked to, as soon as they realize how helpful they can be, they've fallen over themselves to be helpful. It's worth remembering it's extremely simple to get data exported from the systems that your county council, your district council, or your unitary are using into Parish Online. And once it's been set up, it stays there for good. And really good news, the people at Parish Online do all the work. So it doesn't cost your local authority anything to set this up. There's a sort of a small period, literally just a couple of minutes, when they need to let Parish Online come in to actually link to the data, but thereafter everything just runs automatically. So it's worth fighting for this information from your local authority, because once it's set up, it doesn't cost anybody anything. Cemetery management is something that really came up during COVID, because the government suddenly got very worried that there was going to be nowhere to put all these bodies that they feared they might be getting. And we were able to send parish councils around the country this sort of information. They were able to tell the government how many spare plots they had in their cemeteries, and everyone's a huge sigh of relief, because it turns out we've got plenty. Planning applications is probably the most used thing for which I've seen Parish Online used. You can demonstrate why a planning application should or should not go through, because often people don't take everything into account, but you can show everything that may have an implication for any one application, and people make much more knowledgeable decisions. And there's a brilliant facility within Parish Online for making public maps available of the contents within. And here you see one example would be, I really love public maps because once you set them up, any change that you make later within Parish Online automatically is reflected in the public map. So you can put this on your local website, you can send out the URL to sort of groups that need to have it for environmental purposes or whatever. And it stays constantly in date, in sync with what you've actually got in your local copy. And then here's a classic example of taking data from Parish Online in the 2 red squares and how they've been fed into a local leaflet. And then on the Parish Online website itself, there is a tab called Case Studies, and underneath that, they've sorted all these out into the various topics that you might want to be talking about for your council. And the beauty of this is that each one of these case studies shows you how they went about getting the results. So there's a step-by-step link to how you go from where you are at the moment to where you get the actual answer you're looking for. I think this case studies page is really, really useful, and I highly recommend that you give it a try. Good stuff. All right, let's go into how the system is working. Parish Online is a geographic information system, which incidentally is the basis of all the digital mapping systems used by all councils in the country. So if you're sort of on the bottom end of the tiers of government in your local parish, I guarantee you that your town, your district, and your county councils around you are using a GIS, which is compatible with Parish Online. So what you can do is get layers of information from other sources and put it into your presentation. Now, those of you looking at the picture on the right, go back to overhead transparencies and so forth. You put a basic transparency on the system, and then you sort of mark it up with either your felt tip pen or more layers with colors and so forth until you build up the picture you want to see. And all that Parish Online is doing is letting you do that digitally and making it very simple. So I think I sort of said this, but you've got an example in the top of the cadastral parcel layer turned on. So every parcel of land around you where the ownership is known about is featured. Each parcel has a reference number. You simply plug that number into the website for the land registry and you'll get told everything you need to know about the piece of land, who owns it, where the boundaries are, all that stuff. Lots of input from DEFRA, from Historic England. Listed buildings in particular are very useful from Historic England. There's the overhead photography on the bottom one, and then the Ordnance Surveys map down below. Let's see how we do that. So you can turn layers on and off, just like you could overlay that projector with transparencies of different colors and sizes and shapes depending on what you wanted to get across. So you do the same digitally now. And we mentioned before how each object is the source of data. So if you want to find out more, you simply click literally on one of those green dots and it will pop up with all the information plus an automatic link to Historic England's website for that particular entry. So one little dot is actually the access to screens of information. And you can do exactly the same for yourself, depending on what the topic is that you want to use. Now, we did ourselves use the COVID-19 facility. We just simply took all the buildings in the parish. We allocated a color code of, say, orange to everybody who needed help, who needed medical deliveries and food picked up for them. And then we had green for all the people who were prepared to offer help. And it was a simple matter of putting the nearest green to the nearest red. Piece of cake. It worked beautifully because each entry has the building details and postcodes and so forth, so no one could get lost. So there are layers, and the map layers consist of one of three types of geography. Points represent things like trees, bus stops, grit bins, everything like that. Lines represent boundaries, footpaths, roads, that sort of thing. And polygons is a fancy word for everything else. Each layer can only cover one type. So if you need to show something that includes bus shelters and buildings, then you put 2 layers on. And you can show as many layers as you like. The only limit is what makes sense to the people trying to understand what you're displaying. A few tips here. For those of you with tablets, I'm sorry, but mice are much easier. They suggest you use the main browsers. There's actually a query over Safari on public maps. So I would suggest that if you're really intelligent, you should be using Opera anyway. And I'm only saying that because I'm hugely biased, because it's the one I found is the most handy and it's the most consistent between different machines. So if you've got a smartphone or a tablet or a PC or a Mac or all of the above, you can get the same thing on every one of them. So when you go to the first page in Parish Online, the right-hand side, the majority part of the screen, is the Ordnance Survey's digital map of the UK. And if you've got your PSGA license, it's the most high definition map you can get of the UK. On the left-hand side, you've got a column, which currently is showing the layers of data. Each one of those different layers there is actually a collection, and there are layers underneath. So each one has a mini arrow. When you click on the mini arrow, you get another bunch of selections. There are literally hundreds of choices in this system. So to help you find the one that you want, there's a little magnifying glass up here, which is a search button. Click on that, type in floods or something, and it'll show you where to get flood information or whatever it happens to be you're interested in. The system automatically opens up on your parish because it knows who you are, but you are entitled to go and see the entire United Kingdom. You can work all over the country. The difference is that no matter what you do to another person's area, so if you're sort of in the southeast and you're desperately keen on putting a map on something in Scotland, nobody in Scotland can see what you're doing. What you're doing is kept entirely to you, with the 2 exceptions of cemeteries and allotments, and we'll get into that later. You can zoom in, zoom out, just like you can on any digital map. For those of you who are familiar with Google Maps, it works very much the same way. You can scroll left and right, and we're going to move on to doing that in a second. The other thing I would just say is when the system starts up, the only layer that's turned on is the one that shows the parish boundaries. And I have a particular loathing for that layer, so I automatically always turn that off. Because I don't know, there's something about the blue lines of the parish boundaries that irritates me. That is, the default system is with your own parish and your own parish boundary turned on, and you just toggle layers on and off by clicking on them. So I'm just going to show you now quickly the scaling available. If you've got a mouse wheel on your mouse, you can roll it to get the zooming in or out, or you can use the plus and minus buttons on the map itself. So here's the map of the entire United Kingdom as seen from the Ordnance Survey's point of view at one of their maximum scales. And you'll see we're looking at something like 200 kilometers to the scale down on the bottom left of the picture. As we zoom in, you get a bit more detail. You start seeing the maps and the town and the village names, but not a lot else. Zoom in further, you start seeing roads, road names, houses, buildings, and some building names. And then you can go down to beginning to be the absurd. You get individual houses that you can looking at and playing at, and then you can go down to ever more detail. And finally, you end up down in the really sort of centimetric mark. This is the corner of a building. So you can see that the opportunity of going down to tiny scales is there. Not that many people need to use it, but it's nice to know that it is there. And I do use zoom in a lot to try and get the drawings that I'm doing accurately placed. So it's much easier to get a drawing precise when you're at a very large scale, but we'll discuss that later. Talking about layers, so on the left-hand side, this column of layers, the green ones are the base maps that you tend to be using all the time. The brown ones are the mostly third-party layers that you can throw in on top. You can have multiple layers of both types turned on at the same time, and we'll show you some ideas of why you'd want to. So this is the standard map as I was showing you. There's just the one layer turned on, which is the Ordnance Survey Premium Map, and the layers which are turned on have a tick mark, so you can see. So to turn on a layer on or off, you just left click anywhere inside any layer. If you want to see the individual layers underneath, these are actually formally called collections rather than layers, because they're at the top level. They collect all the appropriate layers underneath. So to see what's underneath, click on a mini arrow. I've seen here, I've clicked on the standard premium stack to turn it off, and I've clicked on the grayscale to turn it on, so that you can see the difference. You've got a lot less color and a lot less detail, but this can be useful in certain circumstances, depending on what you're using the system for. You can even go to a white scale, which is simpler yet for anybody who's still working with a dot matrix printer or anything like that. But really, I'm just doing it here to show you how you turn layers on or off. Now, what we've done is we've gone back to the standard stack, but we've also turned on the photography. So we're showing two layers at once here, and you can see the picture's a little bit confusing because you've got stuff from the map itself, but you've also got the photography, and you can vary that. So if you go to anywhere on this layer and do a right click, you bring up a little slider scale here. Notice that the tick here is turned to a cogwheel to show that you're playing with the data. And at the moment, this particular map shows the transparency of the underlying digital map at 60%. Now, if you slide it all the way down to the left, which I'm doing now, you get 100% photograph, which is a beautiful picture. By the way, the photography always lines up automatically with whichever map you've got underneath. So if you're zoomed in to a particular scale, the photography will zoom in accordingly automatically. And you can go the other way and go to 100% map only, which is the normal state of affairs if there are no photographs turned on. Now, if you toggle off the photo layer, it will just turn it off, and you should go back to just plain map. But occasionally, and I just put this in here to make people aware of this, occasionally you just get a blank screen. And all this is that the system's got slightly confused between photographs and maps. Just click on the refresh button and it comes back. And we've come back, we've clicked on the refresh button. I mentioned earlier the search thing, we're just going to show you that. I'm going to click on that, type in flood, and you'll see it comes up with the 3 layers that talk about floods. And if I click on the Environment Agency, I'll get more choices. And I click on the Zone 3 just because we're here in Somerset on the levels, and it's very impressive. When it rains here, that amount of water arrives on the land. So you can see instantly that anybody who builds a house in any of these blue areas is going to be underwater for much of the year, certainly during the winter. And we'll see this later during one of our later pictures. So to turn off the search, you can just click on there and click on there. So just to summarize so far, we've had a look on selecting maps, we've selected photographers or photos and the third-party layers. Now, how would you use those? So we were given in Long Sutton in Somerset 50 trees by the tree charter people a couple of years ago, and they asked us to keep track of them for them. So we stuck them in this field here, and I entered an area which made this show up as red. So to find out more about it, just click anywhere in the red layer. And up your left-hand column, you'll see now changes to a data record for the layer. And it shows who's owning the land, when the trees arrived and where they are. And it also shows that there are 5 attachments to this record. Now, these are attachments that I've put in. You can all add anything to any of your records. When I say any of your records, I do mean the ones that you create yourselves in your parish layers or in your asset register. All the other layers are third-party owned, so you can't touch those. But these you can certainly do whatever you like with. So here is a photograph. I'm just going to click on it to show you the sorts of things you can store here. So I click on the photograph, up comes the 5 items. To open any one of them, just click on the item. And here you see that the trees were as they were being planted. So they've each got a little tube to protect them. They've each got a stake to hold them upright. And I promised to show you the water where it floods around here. We have lots of water available to everybody. So you can see that as you add pictures over time, you're creating a visual record of how things are changing. You can do this. I hope you can see how useful this can be for inspection records, for insurance purposes, for demonstrating the before and after situation of, I don't know, your park bench, how it was before you painted and maintained it, how it is after you've maintained it. That sort of thing is really useful. So we're going to move on now, having shown you how things can be done, what you can do with Parish Online. Now we're going to get into actually doing it. So this is the interactive bit where I sit back and just show you pictures. And those of you who wish to can have a go at setting it up in your own system. Now, those of you who were in the 102 session last week, I will understand it if you feel you've had enough of this. But those of you who've got 2 systems, you need to be able to jump from one to the other, which is a piece of cake. But for those of you who are seeing your Parish Online and your Zoom on the same PC, you're going to need to be able to switch from one to the other. And there are various ways of doing that. You can just use your mouse and click from tab to tab on the browser, or from tab to Zoom session if you're running Zoom in the Zoom app. For those of you who've not done this before, you can press the Alt key on your keyboard, and as you time, hold the Alt key down, and each time you press the tab button, it'll switch to the next window. And it's a very easy way, particularly if you've only got 2 windows open, for jumping from one to the other, just Alt tab, Alt tab, Alt tab. As I said before, I strongly recommend you use a mouse, and those of you who are on tablets, I'm afraid you'll have to struggle along with me. So I'm going to be showing on this screen, on your Zoom screen, what you should be doing. And then I'd like you who wish to have a go at doing it on your own Parish Online copy. So we're going to set a little bit of ground rules first. We're going to create a layer, and layers need a title. So I'm suggesting that just so you can find it in the future, use your own name and the word test for the title. You get asked to use a geometry type. Just for today, it doesn't matter what you choose, but I'm going to do my example based on polygons. We'll talk about doing your own description, and we're going to create 3 columns of data. Every record needs at least 1 column. We're going to go for 3 for training purposes. 1 will be of the text type, 1 will be of a date type, and 1 will be of an allowed value type, just so that you can see how we do it. There will be 3 allowed values that we'll type in. 1's not yet started, the middle one is under construction, and the last one is finished. And for today's test, I'm asking you to imagine that we're going to draw a building of some sort. You can choose whatever shape you like for your building when we get there. Mine, of course, is hugely complicated and a stroke of genius, but yours can be any shape you like. Triangular buildings have been a feature of the past. So, when you go into your copy of Parish Online, you need to go up to the Create menu and click on New Layer. If there's anyone who doesn't have a Create menu, then that's an issue because you don't have the correct rights for this Parish Online. And we need you to talk about it later, you and I, but right now, you'll have to sit back and relax because you've got the wrong sort of account. But for those who've got an account, please click on New Layer. And you will see, as I do that, something like this, where we're going to give it the title. And as you can see, I put in Graham Test. You can put in whatever you like, but I recommend you use the word test just so you know to get rid of it later. And when you're happy, click on the next button. And this is where we choose the geometry. If you click on the little down arrow to the right of the geometry type, you'll see you get 3 choices: point, line, and polygon. Select whichever one you feel comfortable with, but we're going with polygon. Underneath, you have 500 characters where you can explain what it is you're doing. Now, I should have said in the first title, what you type is what's going to appear in the left-hand column here. So it can't be very long, otherwise you'll run out of space. But this is where you put in the details of what you're actually working for, mostly to help you or your successors later down in time. In 6 months' time, when you've got 50 layers and you wonder what on earth this one was for, this is where you come to find out why you created it in the first place. So type in whatever gobbledygook you like today, and when you're ready, just click on Next. And you get a screen that says you need to add a column. What do you want to add? Now, there's nothing there at the moment, so you go up to the plus sign, click on the plus, and the first column will appear. Now, by default, all columns are called name as they first arrive, but all columns must have unique names in the title when you finish. So your first job will be, at least the second column, will be to change the word name. As it is for the moment, we're going to leave it as it is, and we're going to click on the plus sign at the top to add the second column. And this one is where you get a red sign saying you've got to make the column names unique. So cross out, just delete the word name on the second column and change it to read date. And then go to the middle box, click on the drop-down menu and change and select the date column. So that you should now all have two layers, one called name and one called date. When you're ready, click again on the plus button to add the third column. And we're going to change that to read status. We're going to leave it as a text field, a type, but we're going to change it and make some allowed values now, again, just for your benefit to show you what this is all about. So please click when you're ready on the add plus button. And it says add allowed values. Now these basically are designed to try and keep some consistency in your data so that people will get a drop-down list and they have to select which answer they want from the drop-down list. The first one is going to be not yet started. So just where it says add a value, type in not yet started. And then we're going to need to do another one. So then you click on the add button again, which I've done for you. And you make another one called under construction. Click on the add button again and create one called finished. So you should end up with 3 allowed values that look something like this. And when you're happy, click on confirm. If you've made an error, you can click on the cancel button, or you can just overwrite them, whichever you wish, or you can just leave them as they are. It doesn't matter. When you're all happy, please click on confirm. And you should end up with a page that looks like this. So we've got a name field, which is text only. We've got a date field, which is date only. And we've got a status field, which has got 3 allowed items in it. So if you're all happy on that, please click on finish. And you move back to your map. Now, the new layer that you've created is in the parish layers, which are the first of the brown layers that you get to in your system. And by clicking on the down arrow, you may not see your layer straight away. If you've already got layers in there, it may be down the bottom of the page, because they always add new layers to the bottom of the parish layers. So scroll down until you found your test. And I sincerely don't see anyone shrieking at me, so I guess you've all been successful there. I'm just going to move your photographs so I can see if I've got anything I should have talked about. No. So I'm just moving on to show you what I did next. We're going to make one of the columns that we've just created a required column. And the reason for that is that it's all too easy in Parish Online. If you don't mandate that one of your columns has data in it, then plenty of people have managed to put a new building or something on the map, and then they've saved it and the data record has gone off with absolutely nothing in the data columns. So you've got a building on the map, but you've got no idea what it is. It hasn't got any title, it hasn't got any name, it hasn't got any ID. Who knows what it's for? So it's a good idea just to prevent that, to have a required field, which means that you cannot save the record until someone has put something in. And we're going to do that. We're going to make the name field required so that we can always find it later. So to get the name field, you move up to the top right-hand corner and click on the cogwheel, and then select the administration drop-down. And you'll end up with a page that looks like this. Oops, like that one. Now, it may be that the center column is completely empty when you start, but the system is downloading from the cloud, and you'll end up with a list of layers in the middle, which are your layers, and the one you've just created will be somewhere. For many of you, it may be the only one there. For many of you, it may be all the way down the bottom, but it will be there, and you find it, as I have, Graham Test, and just click on it. And then we're going to scroll up to the go up to the columns layer on the right, click on the two tabs, there's a general tab and a column tab, click on the column tab, and you'll see a list of fields. Search and query have all been filled in for you automatically, just leave them as they are. What we're going to do is make the name field a required field. So all you do is move your mouse to the empty space beneath required in the name line and just click on it. And you'll end up with a box that looks like this. So you now have a required tick in the name column. If you're all happy with that, then click on the yellow button at the top, the save button, and we're going to save it. And it asks you, do you really mean to this save? And you say, yes, please. So you click on the green save button. And the system will just blink at you briefly, telling you that it's been saved in a little green square, and then that will disappear. If you've had an issue, it'll be a little red square, and you'll have to try again, but that's very rare. And usually it's because there's been a blip in connectivity. So if you've now all successfully saved your required name field, then we can go back to the maps. So click on the little global icon, the middle globe icon to go back to your maps. Now on my page, I'm just summarizing where we are so that you know where we've gone. We've created a brand new layer, which is called something like Fred's test. We've created 3 columns in the layer. One was status, which we agreed would have drop-down boxes with allowed values. We've made the required, the name field a required field, and we saved the layer and we're ready, all set to go. Now, there is no data in that layer at the moment. All we've created is the infrastructure for adding data, and we add data by what's known as features. So I'm going to go back now to my map. You're presumably already on your maps. And we're going to go to add a feature to put some data in. So find your test layer on the left-hand column and right-click anywhere in the layer, and it brings up the mini menu, the second item of which is add feature. So just click on add feature. And you get a screen that pops up with the left-hand column now called feature editor. It'll have 3 blank columns for name, date, and status, and the red one will be, the name one will be red, showing you that a name is required, and the gray button down the bottom for save stays gray until you've got something in that name button and until you've got a building actually on the map. So in the map side...
Graham,
yep.
How did you get the feature editor? I must have missed that. I was looking for my layer.
Right. So did you find your layer, Cliff?
I've got it. Yes, I got it.
Okay. So right click in the layer.
Anywhere in the layer.
Anywhere on the layer button.
Okay.
And did you get the add feature choice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so select that, and you should come up with this picture that I've got now, which is left-hand column is completely empty, but it's got fields for you to fill the data in. And then the right-hand picture of the map, I'm going to ask you to scroll into a place where you're going to put your building. So somebody has got me on an echo at the moment. Maybe Cliff, you need to mute.
All right, I will do that.
Has that killed it? Yes, I think so. All right, so on your map now, no, someone else has got me on it. So if we can get everyone to mute, please, just so that we kill that feedback. Please go into your map and just find a space where you want to put this building that we're designing, building, creating, storing, whatever. So in my case, I'm scrolling into our recreation ground because the pavilion I'm going to put up there, it's a suitable space. So you just using your zoom and your scrolling options to find yourself a suitable space, which if you look at my screen, you can see I've chosen the recreation ground. Now we're going to fill in the data fields on the left-hand side. So put in a name. Again, I'd call it something test, like pavilion test or test pavilion or something. Give it today's date and choose a status of not yet started. And then I'm rolling on to the next page so that you should be seeing something like I have up on my page. You'll notice that the save button is still grayed out. And that although you've entered the data in the left-hand columns, we haven't drawn the map yet or haven't drawn the item on the map. So the way we're going to do that is your mouse becomes a crosshairs as it moves into the area of the map itself. What you're going to do is put the mouse in a corner of the building that you're going to draw. Just for instance, let's make it the top left-hand corner. You will click once on the mouse and then release the click button and then move the mouse. And as you move the mouse, there will be a blue line that follows it. I'm just going to click on my buttons here. And then when you want to change the direction, you get to a corner of the building, click once, left click, release the button again and move off. You can go off in a different direction. And you do that until you've completed a square or a rectangle or an oblong or whatever you've done. Some people do triangles, some people do circles. But when you're finished, then do a double click. And you'll find that when you've done the double click, the building should be complete and the save button at the bottom left will be in full black. And now you can click on it, please do. So I'm going down to click on the save button. And you'll notice that your building should now have turned red. And in the left-hand column, the data have disappeared because the feature editor has said, you probably want to add another building. So here's a new blank record to do so. In this case, we don't want to add another building. So we're just going to click on the X at the top of the feature editor column. So please do that. And you come back to your base map. You should have a tick mark in your layer to show that that layer is turned on. And you should have a red building on the right-hand side. Now, what we want to do is to show you how to edit that. So click anywhere in the building, anywhere in the red building at all, and your data record will show up on the left. And to edit it, first things first, I'm sorry, your building should now got a blue surround around it to show that it's this particular building that you've selected, and the record on the left applies to the blue building. Along the top of the record are choices of icons, and the left one is a pencil, which means you want to edit it. So click on the pencil. And incidentally, if you had wanted to make a change to the name or the date or the status, you could do it at this point. But what we're going to do is actually make a change to the building just to show you how to do it. So click on the pencil and then move to your building and click anywhere on the building. A blue dot will appear and you'll just experiment by pulling the lines. And you'll see that you can change the shape completely. Now, what I'm suggesting to people as a rule for creating any shape in Parish Online is make the first one just a quick and dirty shape. It doesn't need to be precise at all. In fact, you run into trouble when you're trying to do precision drawing. So just make the first one rough and ready, and then you come back to it as we are now. And to get the precision that you want, zoom in. So try and get a nice large scale so there's room to do anything. It won't make any difference if you just put your building in an empty field. But where I am, I now say I want to pull this to line up with the parish boundary, the boundary at the edge of the field. So I can zoom, and I'll just show you a little picture of the next one. What happens if you pull the buttons? You can line it up completely. And I've left the last little blue dot at the bottom just to show you how you pulled the last corner into place. Now, when you've made a change and you're happy with everything, click on the save button to save it. And again, just do that today for exercise. Oops, sorry. And we're now going to add an attachment just to show you how to do that. So in your left column at the left, there is a big black line that says add attachment. Just click on that. And then you can add anything you've got stored on your hard drive. I don't care what it is. It can be a photograph, it can be a love letter, it can be a note from your insurance company, whatever you like, just click and add it here. And then watch the system. It takes a few seconds for the attachment to add, depending on how big it is, because you're sending it up to the cloud. So if you've added a large photograph or anything like that, it'll take a few seconds, but hopefully everybody now has an attachment added, and you're done. Incidentally, note that if you wanted to delete this at some later stage, the way you do deletions is to come into the record like this, and then just once it's selected and highlighted in blue, you can click on the dustbin icon at the top, and that gets rid of it for you. I'm not suggesting you need to do it now, but that's the way that we do things. So I think.
Sorry, how do you see that attachment? So now I've got the building highlighted. I can't. How do I see it? To see that it's actually theirs?
Well, when you say how do you see it, you are seeing it at the moment. It's in red.
I'm seeing the building in red.
Yes, I see your question. Okay, I beg your pardon. When you want to see something that you've put in, you click on the layer itself in the left-hand column. So when you've gone back to your regular layers, go down to your parish layer, click on your cliff test or whatever it's called, and the building will appear. If it doesn't appear, it will be there somewhere, but you may be on the wrong scale. So you can zoom in and it'll get a lot larger. But I guarantee you that it is there unless you've absolutely failed to do what I'm suggesting, in which case you're your own worst enemy.
Okay, which is probably the case, but I just want to know how I can see the picture that I attached though.
Okay, that's also a good question, Cliff, so thank you. If you click on the building itself, so the data on the left column changes to your data record, then you'll see the attachment there halfway down, or you'll see a plus sign by the attachments. And when you click on the plus sign, it shows you the attachment you've just added. And there's a little green cloud with a white arrow in it next to the attachment. Yes. And you click on that and it'll pop up. Depending on how your browser is configured, it either saves it to your hard drive in something like downloads, or it actually pops it up and shows it to you. It varies between machines.
Okay, yeah, mine's just saving it. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I think we've ended this particular exercise. But before I move on, let me just check to see if anyone else is stuck. I think yes, Tor has gone to sleep. Yep, he's almost falling over there. Well done, Brian. So I mentioned that I would just point out to you that the second set of layers that you can add data to is the asset register. So you can add anything you like in your parish layers. You can't add anything at all to any third-party layer because they're not yours, but you can add data to the asset register. It's already been pre-configured for you to enable you to add assets. And the structure that's there is the structure that the experience has shown nearly everybody needs to record. So you'll find that there's inspection dates and there's what's the inspection interval and that sort of thing. So the asset register is largely an exercise for insurance purposes, particularly if you've got a claim against you, then your insurance company will be delighted if you can show that you maintained the park bench that grandma fell off last week. And it wasn't a feature of your poor maintenance because you've got a maintenance record that shows when it was last done. And so you're covered there. So the asset register is where you can store the data that probably you got stored in some spreadsheet or pieces of paper at the moment. And next week, those of you who wish to attend, we'll be going into this in huge detail. But it's just to let you know that it's there at the moment. What is important is your level of security, okay? The only people that can see what's in your asset register or in your parish layers is anybody who logs into your account. So anybody who's outside your parish council or your doesn't have an account in your particular version of the system is unable to see what you've done. The only exceptions to that are what are called national layers, and there are only two at the moment, one for cemeteries and one for allotments. You can, if you're really friendly with your local parish, you've got parish online and they haven't, you can go in and finish off their cemeteries and allotments layers on their behalf, just because this is feeding information up the chain of government to higher layers where they're really interested in how many spare graves you've got, or how much of your allotments are in use, because that's sort of a health and well-being type thing. But those two layers have got data A that you can add to other parishes, or B, other parishes can see what you've entered in your system at what's called the boundary level. So they can see that you have an allotment, they can see the space that's taken up, but they can't see the individual plot information, because that's where you put rude remarks like, this is Fred's and Fred never pays his bills on time. So that sort of information is not available to anybody else, but you can have it because it's handy. And then later, when we get into public maps, you can select that, yes, all the plots of your allotments are visible to users on the website, but they can't see your comments about Fred. So you do have that selection, that option of controlling what data is visible and what isn't. So that's for the asset register. Finally, we talk about menu headings across the top of your Parish Online first page. If you are menu headings like view, create, tools, tables, etc. I just mentioned them to you here. There is a training session that covers them. There is also a page on the user group website that tells you what every single command does and how to use it. And there is a built-in knowledge base that we discussed earlier today by going up to the cogwheel in the top right-hand corner and clicking on help and support. That's where we went to find the PGSA information, you recall. Really good knowledge base. It's being rewritten as we speak. You'll see that some entries have got, it's been updated for 1 day ago. Some of it's 20 days ago, some of it's a bit longer, but basically they are doing a really great job of upgrading the knowledge base in Parish Online. So the last thing is to let you know that I send you out a document at the end of this session, which lists really useful places for you to go to. One of which is the user group page, which is set up specifically for people who are getting started. One of which mentions that you should really attend the banter sessions on Friday afternoons if you want to. They're free, they're manned by people who are either parish clerks or parish councillors, but they all know Parish Online very well. So they're there to help out anybody who has an issue. So if you try anything after this and you get stuck, just drop into the banter session tomorrow if you wish, and people will answer your questions for you. So I'm going to turn off the share so I can see all of you and just check whether we've got any comments or people needing help. There is no limitation, Bob, as far as I know, on the attachment size. Will I explain more how to use the cemetery management aspects of Parish Online? Yes, there is an upcoming session on cemetery management, but just to explain to you now, Bob, there are basically two sessions. The outline of your cemetery may very well already be in Parish Online.
Graham, I've got the cemeteries open, both
Right.
both the plots and the cemetery boundary, but I can't. I'm at a loss how to add plots.
Okay. The way that we added a polygon just now in that sample we've just done is exactly the same as what you would do in the plots. So in the cemetery plots layer, right click until add feature comes up, and then you can just go ahead and draw the feature as you wish. I do have a wonderful tip for you here, Bob, which is that once you've got the area of the allotments on your map, then blow that up till it fills the screen. Just zoom in then turn on the aerial photography, and you'll see that all the plots in your allotment will be shown on the photograph, and it's a piece of cake to just track around them with your mouse and outline each lot. So providing the photograph is not too out of date, and it's usually within the last 12 months, you will have a pretty up-to-date picture of your allotments, and you can trace around them on the photograph.
Yeah, unfortunately, as is a very old cemetery with graves going back a couple of 100 years, and a lot of it's grassed over.
Okay.
So yes, I've actually got the aerial view open at the moment, and I understand very clearly what you mean, but where there is nothing to trace around, does it mean?
Well, have you got Parish Online on the screen? You've got Zoom running on.
Yes.
Would you like to share your screen, Bob, and we can come in and go over it together?
I'll try, but I've had trouble with screen sharing before.
That's just selfishness.
Right, try that.
Yeah, it's beginning. Hasn't got there yet, but we're getting there.
Okay.
And the suggestion is that you need to come out of full screen mode, but
no.
I'm just seeing a big blank screen at the moment.
It says I am screen sharing.
Well, I'm seeing a black screen. I can see your mouse moving around, but I don't see any data.
Okay.
Do you often have that? Can you see data yourself?
Yes.
That's a shame, isn't it? Maybe it's just taking time to fill in. What are you showing on your screen? You got photographs there?
I'm scrolling in and out. I've got the OS map with the I've got the overlaid with the aerial photography.
Yeah, I suspect that we're taking a little time for you to upload your screen because there's a lot of data on there.
Okay, so not enough bandwidth.
Well, that's one argument. Or you could just turn off your photography. That will probably make it much faster.
Okay, done that.
Well, it hasn't made any difference at all at this end yet. Could you just try going up to the top left of your browser and doing a refresh, Bob?
Yeah, F5, yeah.
Because we're not seeing anything, at least I'm not seeing anything at this end. I just got a big black screen. Well, I think nothing yet. So rather than hold up everybody else,
no, you carry on.
When we finish, I'm really happy to hang on with you, and we can go over it together. If you stop sharing your screen now.
Yeah, I've stopped.
Okay, then I get back to everyone else. And this is the point where I say, funny questions, do other countries in Europe have this sort of mapping application? Great question, Cliff. Parish Online has a big brother called XMAP, and XMAP covers the world. There's no reasons why anybody in any other country shouldn't buy XMAP. The issue is how much detail do their local mapping organizations offer over XMAP itself. So XMAP in the, the commercial version is limited to the amount of data it has purely because the Ordnance Survey hasn't been into Canada or France or wherever it happens to be to do the work. So you're limited to whatever they publicly publish. But the answer to your question is, yes, they have this sort of application through XMAP or through over their local people. Whether they probably don't have the equivalent of Parish Online. That's really, I think that's quite unique. It's very good. We have a question from Tracy, if she'd like to have a go.
Yeah, it's just a simple one, really. I have Parish Online through subscription to my local association, but I don't seem to have the APGB license. It keeps coming up with that, and I don't have that layer.
Right.
But I've got everything else.
You do have a PGSA license?
Pardon?
You do have a PGSA number?
Well, I don't have a number, but I have everything is active.
Really? So you do have address space, that sort of thing?
I do have, well, I've been able to do everything that you've said today, but I just don't have that one layer come up on my top layers. And I when I turn it on and log into it, it says get an APGB license.
Right. Well, two ways around that. First of all, you can go through the routine that we did at the start and go for a PGSA license, and that should lead you automatically to the APGB. If it doesn't, then you can go to the APGB's own website and apply there. Or thirdly, you can hang on at the end of the session and we'll go through it after we've sorted out Brian's issue.
Lovely.
I beg pardon, it wasn't Brian, it was Bob. But you're very welcome to do that. Let me just check to see if there's anybody else who has any questions, please. Usually when I ask this, there's a long, embarrassing silence, which means either people are just dumbstruck and they have no idea what to ask. Alternatively, they're all bored rigid and want to go. So, we have everybody who's either dumbstruck or has no questions that they wish to ask. I do have a question for all of you then. There's a question from Ireland, which I'll get to in a second. And my question is, if anybody has a topic of Parish Online for which they would like a training session, then please do let me know, because I'm always keen to write another one and help out where people find that there's a lack of information that they need. So Eileen has said, when creating a new building, how do you know to locate at the exact location? That is a wonderful question, Eileen. Do you know the exact location in terms of a Latin long or an Easting and Northing? Or do you mean, how do you find out where it's meant to be? So I'm not even sure we've got Eileen still with us, do we?
Yes, I'm here now. Well, you can know the exact location by either getting a grid reference with OS locate, or you can use 3 words. Okay,
so Parish Online has a very definite exception to using the 3 words thing. They find that there are way too many errors in it. So, and there is if you look in the knowledge base and type in 3 words or whatever it's called, it'll tell you why exactly they don't use it. However, they do provide you with the opportunity of putting in location data in all sorts of ways. So if you go up to your view item in the top left of the main menu screen, there's something that says coordinate finder.
All right.
You got that?
Yeah.
Okay, the top button is a drop-down list where I think it's something like British National Grid.
Yeah,
then you got,
I can see now I can put the grid reference in there.
Okay, so a couple of points to mention for you there, Eileen. If you're used to Latin long being hours, minutes, and seconds, this system is expecting it in a decimalization view.
No, I would use grid reference really.
You do? Okay, so you're all right now then?
Well, not really. Okay.
Well, would you like to share your screen and then
okay.
maybe
I can show you an example I've done. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just show you. And
so if you can share your screen, that's good.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely, crystal clear.
Right. I had previous to this created a layer which was going to be where we put commemoration trees.
Right.
So I put 1 tree in.
Right.
Now I did that. There's 2 things really. When I put that in, okay, I was trying to measure, but I couldn't do that. So I had to guess a bit.
Well, first of all, Brian, click on the pencil button, first of all, so at the top left, so that you can edit this. Yep, that one.
Okay.
Now you'll find you can move the tree wherever you like.
Okay.
Just click on it and move it.
But I can't put a grid reference and move it to that grid reference, can
I? What you can do is you can use the reverse technique. So if you click the feature editor off, the X at the top of the column.
Yes.
Now go to your tree and right click on it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It hasn't come up with one. All right. Normally, if you...
It's got a lot long here, isn't it? Is that what that is?
Yes. Well, that's an Easting and a Northing, yes.
Yeah.
So that's the data that you want. Just mention.
Well, I would be, I'd like that as a grid reference, really.
Okay, I will send you or you can Google it yourself, but there are sites that will say, well, give us your details and we'll turn it into a lat long.
Okay.
But I'll send you a link that does that for you after the event.
Yeah, but when I create it, I couldn't say it should be grid reference, or if I wanted to put another tree in now, for instance, at a particular grid reference, how would I do that?
Okay, so go up to your view button at the top.
Yeah.
Click on coordinate finder.
Okay.
And then you would type in the grid reference there and it will end up on your picture.
Oh, I enter values. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Brilliant.
if you have them, you can just stick them in.
Yeah.
Or we can do some guesses and put them in for you, but that's how you do it.
I can see what to do now. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
And you'll get your tree when you put that number in there, it comes up with a dot on the screen for where you've put it.
Okay.
And then you can adjust it if you wish to.
Okay.
All right.
Can I just ask one more while I'm here now?
Sure. Yeah.
This tools, which is a measure.
Yeah.
Right. Now I find this difficult to use. Okay, I can go. See the whole thing.
What is it you're trying to measure?
Oh, I'm trying to measure from that tree to the edge, for instance.
Oh, okay. So first thing I would suggest is zoom in so you get a much bigger scale. Much easier to do when you zoom in. So yeah, that's good.
No.
Now click once, and then just draw a red line. There you go.
All right, click one.
Yes.
Okay.
And then when you get to the end, double click.
And then double click. Okay.
Yes, double click. And now you can see it's 2.75 meters.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Okay. How do I clear that?
Well, see down the bottom, huge red screen saying clear all. It's a bit of a giveaway, really.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. If you'd like to unshare your screen, please, Eileen, then that would solve that problem.
How do I do that?
If you go up to the top of your screen, it should come up with a little bar that says stop sharing. Maybe you're in full screen mode. You may need to hit the escape button. No? What sort of computer are you using?
A laptop.
In Windows?
Oh, hang on. I should be able to get it. What I need to do is to put it into full screen, isn't it? Oh, sorry.
That's right. If you there, I can see it now. So you're viewing your thing. You've got to view options. What it'll be to turn it off. There we go. Well, not quite. You probably need to move your mouse to the top of the screen, and it should bring up a little drop-down list that says stop sharing. No, doesn't look like it's going to. Are you in full screen mode?
Oh no, I'm trying to get to that.
Go right to the top of the screen and maybe press your escape button on your keyboard.
Yeah, I tried that.
No, in that case, I'm at a loss. If you do an Alt Tab, what happens? Oh, I know what you need. You need to do do Alt Tab and go to the Zoom screen. I think you're in Parish Online at the moment. Can you go to the meeting registration? Zoom?
All right, okay. I'm clicking on that. No,
nothing.
No.
Well,
hang on.
maybe we'll just shut you off and that'll solve the problem.
Sorry.
Well, no, it's not an issue. It's just that if anybody else has any questions that we need to go to their screen, it's an issue. But if it's nobody else does, then we don't have any issue. We'll just say, thank you. Any more questions that anyone would like to ask? And I don't have you in gallery. I can't control the view to see who's asking questions at the moment.
I put one in the chat, Graham.
I can't get to the chat. Oh, I can. I suppose if I come out of
Basically,
that.
I'm saying if you've got a display and you want to print it, but you want to put a label box into it, how do you do that? Or do you save it as a PDF and then just edit it offline?
No, that's a very complicated way of doing it. There are much better ways of doing it. So if it comes to checking on how to do this in the knowledge base,
Okay, I haven't looked at that yet.
that's what they call styling. So if you type in STYLE, it tells you
Come
all
through
about
that.
it. Or you can use the annotate tool. So go to the tools annotate menu, and you can turn on, it asks you in the left-hand side. I'm a bit stuck. I can't. Oh no, hang on. Let me get another system going. One second. I'm just starting Parish Online on another computer so I can walk you through this.
Ah, okay.
Hey, there you go. You found it.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So, Brian, for your purposes, I'm just going to take the screen back and share it. And we're going to switch to Parish Online. I come out of here. That's where I want to go. I want to go to Parish Online. So let's suggest that we need to put a label on something. Let's zoom in a little bit just to give you something to cling on to. So let's just say that this lake, this pond thing here, we want to put a label on it. So I'm going to go into Tools, Annotate, and I'm going to create a new object. And it says, what do you want? Now, what I want to do is create a label. So that's the label sign here. So create a label. And it says, what do you want the label to be? And say, this is, if I could spell, goodness me, a pond. It says, okay, then where do you want it to be? And we want it to be there. And we can say finish. And now there is your label.
Right, thank you.
Now, that is using the annotate tool, which is slightly clumsy, and Parish Online, the people there recommend you only use it for a temporary thing. Don't make it permanent. The permanent thing is to go into style and create a label within style, which is, again, I'm very happy to show you, but it's a bit of a longer process, and it's actually the topic of another session, because styling is a whole session in itself, if you will.
Okay, well, we're signing up to most of your training sessions.
Okay.
So
I'll make sure I add style. Okay.
I'll change the background picture just for you, Graham.
Oh, you're very kind. Well, I like Yes Tour. I'm very fond of
It's part of our parish.
All right. Let me come out of sharing and see if anyone else is waving, shouting, screaming, or needs help. How do you add a visible text box? Can be printed off or saved as a PDF? That is a great question. Happy to show you that if everyone else is ready to show it. So I'll go back to sharing my screen. So let's click out of here. Let's actually we'll turn off the annotate. Get rid of that. It's no longer up here. Pond. So I'm having a senior mode. What's the question again? You get to browse, won't I? 1 second.
I think you already answered it. The last. Thing
Oh, is that the question? The text question? Oh, it's Brian's question. All right. Oh, well, no, it's the printing off and saving as a PDF. Is that something you're familiar with, or you want to be shown that? Brian, you're on mute at the moment, Brian. I'm not hearing.
I can probably work out how to do it. Just to print.
Okay. Well, just to give you a clue, there's a big print button menu at the top. You click on that, and it takes you through it.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else that needs any questions answered, or are we all happy? And I'm going to stick with a couple of you afterwards just to fix their issues. One for, Tracy.
Just to say that whilst you were the gentleman was trying to get back onto the screen, I went in and got my APGB license.
Brilliant.
When I clicked onto the link, it recognised the number. It just hadn't activated it. So if anyone else has that issue, That's all they need to do.
Thank you very much for pointing that out, and we'll put that down for future reference. Good. Well, then, if no one else has anything, may I say thank you all very much for coming this afternoon. I hope you got something useful out of this. And I will look forward to seeing some of you next time, hopefully. And in the meantime, if I'm going to stick on with Bob Granger, I'm going to see if we can crack this problem. Another question from what? Yeah.
Yeah, you were going to sort out me too, because I can't register for the next one.
That is true. Stay on the line then, if you
Thank you.
would, please, Maureen, and Tracy will sort that one out. So
You're going to send us the recording, is that right?
Oh yes, absolutely. It'll be a couple of hours. It takes a while for it the system to sort itself out, and then I usually need to trim out the nonsense at the beginning, although I leave all the bits at the end. So you're all very welcome. Please say goodbye unless you want to stay on and go through all the intricacies of Sid,
Bye.
Tracy, and Bob. Thank you.
Thanks very much.